Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be looking into the world of canine anesthesia.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So specifically how researchers are using some pretty cutting-edge tech to figure out how dogs feel pain during surgery.
Right.
You know?
It's interesting you say cutting edge because for a long time, veterinarians have relied on heart rate and blood pressure.
Exactly.
To gauge an animal's pain level.
Yeah.
But those readings can be all over the place.
Right. It's almost like you're trying to put together this super complicated puzzle, but you're missing like half the pieces.
Exactly.
So what are researchers using now to get this clearer picture of pain in dogs under anesthesia?
Well, it's kind of like being able to just peek right into the brain and see what's happening.
Whoa.
Yeah. In real time.
What?
That's essentially what they're doing with EEG.
EEG?
Or electroencephalography.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Isn't that the thing they use to study brain activity in humans, too?
Absolutely.
Like for sleep disorders and stuff.
Yes, you got it. And now vets are taking that same technology and using it on our furry friends.
Wow. Okay, so how does EEG actually work? Like, what are they measuring?
So basically, EEG measures the electrical activity in the brain using these little sensors that are placed on the scalp.
Okay.
They pick up tiny electrical signals made by the brain cells.
Wow.
And those signals, they actually tell us a lot about what's going on in the brain, including if an animal is feeling any pain.
So it's almost like you're listening in on the brain having a conversation, even when the dog is completely knocked out?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Wow.
There was this study that came out recently from National Chengxing University in Taiwan, and they used EEG to see if they could find brainwave patterns that show pain in dogs who were under anesthesia, specifically isoflurane.
Oh, isoflurane, that's a pretty common anesthetic, right?
Yes, very common, used in veterinary medicine all the time. This study looked at two main measurements from the EEG, the patient state index, or PSI, and then the spectral edge frequency, or SF.
Now, those are some pretty technical terms.
Yeah.
Can you break those down for us? What do they actually tell us about the brain?
Absolutely. So think of PSI kind of like a gauge for how switched on the brain is. It goes from 0 to 100, with 0 being like complete silence electrically, and 100 meaning wide awake. So the lower the PSI, the deeper the anesthesia.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So if the dog's PSI starts to climb during surgery, could that mean they're in pain?
Well, that's what the researchers wanted to figure out.
That is the million-dollar question. And what about this Ceph thing? What does that one tell us? Okay,
so Ceph is a little more complicated, but basically it tells you the dominant frequency of the brainwaves. Higher frequencies generally mean more alertness, more brain activity. And then lower frequencies are more associated with deep sleep or anesthesia.
Okay, so by looking at both of them, the PSI and the Ceph, the researchers could get a much better idea of how the dog's brain is responding to the anesthesia and possibly the pain.
Exactly.
Wow.
To test their theory.
Yeah.
They used a method to induce a pain response in the dogs.
Hold on, how did they do that? Did they actually hurt the dogs?
So it sounds a little scary. But they used a very humane technique called a towel clamp. And it's been used in other studies. They basically just briefly clamp a section of the dog's tail while they're monitoring their brain activity and their vital signs.
So they're inducing this pain response in a controlled way and watching how the dog's brain reacts.
Exactly.
So what did they find? Did the PSI and the Ceph actually change when the dogs felt pain?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes.
Wow.
They did. But to understand what those changes really mean, we need to look at the specific brainwave patterns they observed.
All right, I'm ready to dive deeper.
Okay.
What can you tell us about these brainwave patterns? How did the dogs' brains change when they were feeling pain?
All right, so first let's talk about the different types of brainwaves. You've probably heard of alpha waves. Those are the relaxed ones.
Right, like when you're meditating.
Exactly.
Trying to boost those alpha waves.
Exactly.
And then you've got beta waves for when you're working hard.
That's right, when you're focused.
Right.
Now there's also delta waves. These are the slow waves of deep sleep. And theta waves, which are kind of in between. Like drowsiness or daydreaming.
So they were watching for changes in all of those different types of brain waves when the dogs felt pain.
Yes. But the changes weren't the same across the board.
Okay.
Remember, the dogs were under anesthesia.
Right.
So their brains were already in a suppressed state.
Yeah.
But when they felt that pain, there was a distinct shift in those brain waves.
Okay. I'm on the edge of my seat here. What kind of shift did they see?
Okay. So as you might expect, there was a decrease in delta waves. Oh. So they weren't in that deep sleep state anymore.
That makes sense. Pain would wake you up even from sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they saw a pretty big increase in both alpha and beta wave activity.
Huh?
This tells us that even though they were still technically under, they were moving towards a more alert state.
So even though they were knocked out, their brains were being woken up by the pain.
That's exactly right.
Wow.
And this shift was especially strong in the left frontal lobe of the brain.
Okay.
Which is really interesting because it hints at something called brain lateralization.
Brain lateralization. What is that?
So it's the idea that the different sides of the brain are better at different things.
Okay.
You see this in humans a lot, where the left side is language and logic, and the right side is creativity and things like that.
So you're saying dogs might have this too? And that the left side of their brain could be handling pain.
That's what the study seems to suggest.
Wow.
And it brings up a lot more questions about how dogs experience pain.
Wow. This is absolutely fascinating. So we've got these brainwave changes, a possible link to brain lateralization in dogs, and this crazy technology that can actually see pain in the brain.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? What does it all mean?
That's the real question.
That's the crux of the matter.
Right.
And to really dig into those implications, we need to take a closer look at the specifics of this study and see how those findings can help us better care for our furry friends.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm ready to dig deeper.
Okay.
Let's unpack the details of this study and see what we can learn from it.
Awesome.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Let's unpack the methodology a bit further.
Yes. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. You said there were 14 female dogs in the study.
Yes.
Why only females?
So that's a great question.
The dogs were all female, and they were undergoing spaying at the Veterinary Medical Teaching Hospital at the university. This let the researchers focus specifically on pain responses during a common surgery.
That makes sense.
Right.
Like controlling for variables in an experiment, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They made sure the dogs didn't have any other health conditions that might affect things.
Okay, so they really wanted to isolate that pain response.
Right.
And be sure it wasn't being influenced by other things.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got our healthy female dogs all prepped for surgery.
Right.
What happened next?
So like any surgery, the dogs got general anesthesia.
Right.
In this case, they used a specific amount of isoflurane, which is 1.5%, to keep them under the whole time.
Isoflurane, that's that common one, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what they gave me when I got my wisdom teeth out.
That's right. It's used all the time in human and vet medicine.
Wow.
The researchers wanted to make sure the dogs were consistently under for the whole thing, so they watched their level of anesthesia very carefully.
Okay, so we've got our dogs knocked out.
Yes.
How did they actually measure the brain activity?
Right.
Like, where did they put the electrodes?
They used a special EEG sensor that's made for animals.
Okay.
It's called the RD Sedline EEG sensor. It has 6 electrodes.
Wow, 6?
Yes.
So they're getting a pretty detailed picture of what's going on in there.
A very detailed picture.
Okay.
And they put it on the dog's forehead to target the frontal lobe.
Okay, why the frontal lobe? Is there something special about that part?
The frontal lobe is like the executive center of the brain. It does the higher level thinking, planning, and decision making. And it also seems to process emotions and pain.
So by focusing on the frontal lobe, they're seeing how the dog is actually experiencing the pain.
That's right.
Not just a reflex.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
They placed 4 active electrodes. 2 above each eye and 2 near the outer corners. This helps them get consistent measurements.
Oh, okay. So like standardized placement so they can compare the data.
Exactly.
Okay, so the EEG is in place. They're watching how deep the anesthesia is.
Right.
What happens next?
Okay, so now is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Remember the towel clamp technique?
Oh, yeah, the one that sounds kind of scary.
Yes.
But is actually fine.
It is very humane.
Okay.
So once the dogs are comfortably under, they put the towel clamp on part of the dog's tail for 60 seconds.
Okay, so they're creating this controlled pain.
Yes.
And seeing how the brain reacts.
Right.
What did they find? Did the EEG tell them anything useful?
So this is where it gets exciting. Remember the PSI and the Ceph?
Yes. the patient state index, and spectral edge frequency.
You got it.
Those are the ones that can tell us about pain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, when they did the towel clamp, the researchers saw a huge increase in the PSI values.
Wait a minute. So their PSI went up when they were feeling pain?
Yes.
Does that mean they were actually waking up from the anesthesia?
That's a great question. And that's what's so interesting about this.
Okay.
The dogs stayed unconscious on the outside, but their brain activity, as measured by the PSI, was definitely showing more arousal.
So even though they weren't moving or making any noise, their brains were saying, hey, this hurts.
Exactly.
Wow.
And here's the even crazier part. The PSI stayed high even after they took the clamp off.
What?
So the pain lingered.
Wow. So it wasn't just a quick thing. It really continued to affect their brains.
It did.
That's incredible. What about the Ceph?
Okay, so the Ceph findings were really interesting, too.
Okay.
They noticed the Ceph was consistently higher on the left side of the brain.
Wait, the lefty side? Why is that important?
It goes back to that brain lateralization thing.
Right.
The fact that it was higher on the left suggests that that side of the brain might be more involved in processing pain.
So not only are they seeing pain signals in the brain, but they're starting to see which parts of the brain are involved.
Exactly.
This is getting really deep.
It is. But those PSI and Ceph values, they're just part of the story. To really understand what's happening. We need to look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
The changes in the different brainwave frequencies themselves.
Okay, let's talk brainwaves. So we've got delta, theta, alpha, and beta. Remind me what each of those means.
Sure. So delta waves are the slow waves of deep sleep.
Right.
Theta waves are a little faster.
Okay.
Drowsiness, meditation, creativity. Alpha waves are even faster.
Okay.
Relaxation, a calm but alert state.
Yeah.
And then beta waves. Those are the fastest. They're linked to thinking, focusing, and even stress or anxiety.
Okay, so they were looking at all of these different frequencies during the towel clamp to see how the pain was affecting the dog's brain.
That's exactly right.
Okay, and what did they find?
So they found that, as you might expect, there was a decrease in delta wave activity.
Okay.
Meaning the pain was pulling them out of that deep sleep.
Makes sense. Pain is a good way to wake you up even if you're under.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also saw a big increase in both alpha and beta wave activity.
Okay.
This tells us they were becoming more alert, even though they were still unconscious.
Wow. So even though they were technically asleep, their brains were kind of waking up?
That's a great way to put it.
Because of the pain?
Yes.
Wow.
This pattern of brain activity is what we call EEG arousal.
EEG arousal.
Yeah.
It's like the brain is saying, hey, pay attention, something's happening.
Exactly. And remember, this was especially true in the left frontal lobe.
Right.
Which again supports the idea that that area plays a role in pain perception.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this all fits together.
Yeah.
The towel clamp, the PSI, and the Ceph readings, those brainwave patterns, it's like a detective story.
It really is.
With the researchers using EEG to figure out the truth about pain. Right. In dogs under anesthesia.
Exactly.
This is incredible. And you said they controlled for other things too, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Like those things that can mess up the results.
Yes, they're called confounding variables.
Confounding variables?
Yes. Like changes in anesthesia levels, body temperature, or even just random noise in the signal.
Okay. So they really wanted to be sure the changes they saw were because of the pain.
Precisely.
Not something else.
Yes.
Wow, that's really thorough.
It is.
It really shows us that EEG can be used to actually detect and possibly even measure pain in dogs.
Yes.
Even when they're under and look like they're sleeping.
Exactly.
This is amazing. We've really gotten into the details of this study, from choosing the dogs to the EEG and the brainwaves.
We have.
But what does it all mean for the average dog owner? How does this research actually help dogs in real life?
That's the million-dollar question. And to answer that, we need to look at the practical implications of all this, which we'll discuss when we come back for the final part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Sure. We've been talking about this incredible study that used EEG to actually see pain in the brains of dogs.
Yeah, it's really groundbreaking stuff.
Even when they were under anesthesia.
Exactly.
So now for the most important part, what does it all mean? How can we use this information to take better care of our pets?
Yeah, that's the big question. Well, this study shows us that we really need to focus on managing pain in dogs.
Okay.
Even when they're under anesthesia and seem to be sleeping.
Makes sense. I mean, you wouldn't want to wake up during surgery in pain.
Exactly. We call this a multimodal approach to pain relief.
Multimodal, so like not just using one drug.
Right. It's about combining different strategies to tackle the pain in different ways.
Okay.
So it might mean giving pain meds before, during, and after surgery, and maybe using things like local anesthetics or nerve blocks, or even alternative therapies like acupuncture.
So it's really about creating a custom pain management plan.
Yes.
For each dog.
Exactly. And what's really cool about this EEG research is it gives us a new way to measure pain in dogs.
Okay.
Objectively.
Right, because they can't exactly tell us what's hurting.
Exactly. Now we can look at those brainwave patterns and get a much clearer picture.
So it's almost like we're starting to understand their language.
It is. Just imagine if EEG monitoring became standard practice.
Why?
During vet anesthesia.
That would be incredible.
Yeah, vets could see those pain signals and adjust the pain meds right then and there.
Wow. So no more guessing games.
Exactly.
That'll be amazing for their recovery too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If we can manage pain well during surgery, they'll have less discomfort afterwards.
That makes sense.
And that means faster healing, less pain, and a quicker return to their normal happy selves.
It makes you wonder how many dogs might have suffered in the past.
Yeah, it really does.
Because we just didn't understand how they felt pain under anesthesia.
That's a tough question, but thankfully we're learning more and more.
Right. And this study is a huge step in the right direction.
Absolutely. It opens up so many exciting possibilities for research in the future.
So what are some of those possibilities? What comes next?
Oh, there's so much more to learn. Researchers are looking closer at those EEG measurements to find even better ways to detect pain. They're also looking at how different drugs affect pain perception and how to best manage pain for different breeds, different ages, and different health conditions.
Wow. It seems like there's a whole new world opening up in veterinary medicine. It's really exciting to see where this research goes.
I agree. And this could even go beyond just dogs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it could help us understand pain in all sorts of animals.
Wow.
Cats, horses, even exotic animals.
Wow. We really are pushing the limits of what we know.
We are.
About how animals think and feel.
It's fascinating.
This has been an amazing deep dive. I had no idea.
Me too.
There was so much going on in a dog's brain, even under anesthesia.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It really is. It just shows how important it is to keep learning and advocating for the best possible care for our furry friends.
I completely agree.
That's a great takeaway. This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the world of canine anesthesia and pain perception.
It's been a pleasure talking about it.
Okay, that's a wrap for today. What are your thoughts on all of this? We'd love to hear from you. From Vet Neurojar, keep those minds inspired, hearts light, and tails wagging.